Welcome to A Day in Her Life. I'm your host, Ellie Rinnick, and I am fascinated by how other women get their days done. On today's episode, Brittany Sheehan is joining me to discuss a day in her life. Brittany is a sleep consultant and mom of 3 kiddos in Manhattan Beach, California. Brittany shares how she's prioritizing her vitamin D and me time, also known as the time between work and pickup, to give her the transition that she needs to get into the home portion of her day. Brittany also shares how she structures her days and weeks to prevent that dreaded break between meetings, and how she's using Monday mornings to get stuff done around the house and complete her mom CEO tasks. I learned so much from Brittany in this episode, including some new to me terms like chaos tax that I will definitely be applying in my everyday. Thank you so much to Brittany for being a guest on today's episode and for her patience recording this episode as we were riddled with some technical difficulties on my end. Brittany was also kind enough to give our listeners a 15% off discount code for any of her courses. Using the code ONEDAYPOD, all one word, you can get 15% off all single courses exclusive of bundles and custom plans that's valid through the end of November. I have been a raving fan of Brittany's since I had my daughter, and we've also done her toddler course when my son was going through some sleep struggles last year. I cannot recommend her enough. You can learn more about Brittany at Brittany Sheehan Sleep on Instagram, or learn about her courses at BrittanySheehan.com. And as always, thank you for sharing a part of a day in your life with a day in her life. I am so grateful that you're here. If you haven't yet, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and share with a friend. It would mean so much to me. Also, if you have any suggestions about guests or recommendations or feedback, pretty much anything, please reach out on Instagram at A Day in Her Life Pod or on the contact form at adayinherlife.com. I love hearing from you, and I cannot tell you how much I value your feedback and recommendations. And with that, let's have some fun. Welcome to A Day in Her Life podcast. Today, Brittany Sheehan, sleep consultant extraordinaire and mom of 3, is joining me to discuss a day in her life. Welcome, Brittany. Thanks so much for joining me today.
I'm so thrilled to be here.
So, Brittany, let's jump right in. If you wouldn't mind, can you set the scene and fill us in on where you live, what you do, what your family looks like?
Yes. So I live in Manhattan Beach, which is a part of LA. If you know where like Venice is, I'm about 20 minutes south of Venice. And I have a husband and I have 3 little nuggets. My oldest is 6. I have a 6-year-old boy, Teddy, a 4-year-old boy, Baker, and a little girl who just turned 2, Delaney.
Awesome. And can you tell us a little bit about how you help parents in sleep? Because that's how actually we got connected when you saved my marriage and happiness with my daughter, Hazel.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny you say that because I feel like everyone comes to me because they're like, my child jumped out of the crib or like my baby can't nap. But that's actually what happens. Like, yes, we solved the sleep issues, but it's like all of the ripple effects, if you will, right? It's like, oh, you actually can like go out with someone because somebody else can put the baby to bed, or like you and your husband can actually hang out because people aren't standing in the hallway at 2 a.m. So yes, I work with families one-on-one like I did with you guys. And everyone I work with, it's between birth and age 7. So kind of running the whole spectrum, one-on-one plans. And then I also have courses. So some families who maybe don't need like 2 weeks of me, you know, in their ear being like, you can do this. They have the courses where they can have my information really like distilled down to do on their own. And then I have a podcast as well. So this is super fun for me because I'm used to being the one who's hosting the podcast. Now I get to just like talk and you have to edit it. So it's great.
Well, we're so happy to have you as a guest today. And your services have been a huge support for our family, both for my daughter and when my son, who's 4.5 now, was having some even more frustrating sleep issues than when he was a baby, because now he can talk back.
Yeah, exactly.
But so Brittany, let's go through a day in your life. If you wouldn't mind kind of kicking us off with what your mornings look like, start from kind of getting up to getting the kids to school. What does that morning period look like in your household?
Yes, I took your instructions very seriously. So I picked a day where I was like, okay, this day coming up is like relatively representative, you know, because some days I could make it seem really exciting and it's not always, right? So I picked a Wednesday. So my alarm on weekdays at this point, and for context too, we just started kindergarten for my oldest. So this is the first year we have 2 kids in school who are in different schools. So we're kind of like figuring out the groove of all of this. But My alarm goes off at 7. And I get up first and try, if I can, to just get myself dressed, brush my teeth, wash my face, that kind of stuff, make the bed so that I'm taken care of. Then I get my little daughter up first, change her diaper, get her dressed. Then we go down together to my middle son Baker's room. We get him up, we get him dressed. And then we come out to the kitchen, and Teddy, praise the Lord, at 6 is now pretty self-sufficient. So by that point, he's gotten himself up and he is typically dressed. My husband works from home, so sometimes they're like in the kitchen chatting or something, or he's just in his room playing. I make them all breakfast. So on this day, we did yogurt. We're on a big yogurt kick, and waffles for breakfast. And then I do, and I shouldn't admit this because I know you're supposed to like do everything the night before, but I do, with my son's kindergarten, they have lunch there, which is amazing. It's just like public school free lunch. So we pack his bag, which is super fast. He just has to have a snack in there. So I'll like cut up some apples, get him his water bottle, and then pack my middle son's lunch as well. So he like needs a lunch packed for preschool.
What time do you typically get downstairs with both Delaney and Baker?
Like 7:20, I would say. I would say it's about 20 minutes from like when my alarm goes off to like both of them, maybe 7:25. And then that we're both down, all three of us are downstairs and like ready to go. Yep.
Awesome. And then your husband and Teddy are down there usually, or Teddy's just kind of taking his time.
Yeah, exactly. Like my husband will kind of come in and out. So the way we have it set up is he actually has like an office that we built like with walls and windows and everything in our garage because the garage was bigger than we needed. So this is definitely his work time, but of course he'll like come in to get coffee or he'll come in and just like say hi to the kids. So he's not necessarily like helping with anything at that point, but he's around and, we get to hang out with him a little bit, which is nice when he's popping in.
Got it. Does he start really early?
He does.
Okay.
Super early. So we live in LA, as I said, but he works New York hours. He works in finance. He has his own small hedge fund. So he's up at 5. So he's already like, it's funny because his hours are so different from mine that sometimes we'll be eating breakfast and he comes in and like gets sushi from the fridge. And I'm like, this is disgusting. It's like 8 a.m. But it's like his lunchtime. It's so, yeah, he's like in his own world. But that's interesting. So at 7, I would say 7:48, that is when I take Teddy to school. And because there's usually a little bit of a like, did you brush your hair? Or do we have our socks on? The kind of the last scramble. And then we're usually outside walking by 7:50 by 7:50. That was when we leave. So at that point, Alex, my husband, does come inside and then he's kind of on duty with the 2 little ones while I'm walking Teddy to school. So it's really nice now that he's in kindergarten. We can walk to school. So on this day, we walked just the 2 of us. And he was asking me, he always wants me to tell him a story. I was telling him some stories. Walk home, I drop him off, give him a big kiss. And that day I was walking back with one of his classmates' dads, who's like a friend of ours. And we were just chatting about stuff. And then I'm back in the house by 8:20. So our nanny arrives at 8:30. So it's been actually really nice because typically the morning is like a scramble, that's how it was when both of the boys were in preschool together. But now I have this kind of weird lull for 10 minutes where Alex will go back to his office and then the kids are there for 10 minutes before the nanny comes. There isn't really time for me to do like much. So I've decided now it's like our story time, which I never did before in the morning with my kids. It's like too busy. So it's actually been really nice. So I sat with them. They each picked a book and we read a book together. And then our nanny is there by 8:30. So when she arrives, Baker, my middle son, he's only in preschool 3 days a week. So on Wednesdays, which was the day I was recording this, our nanny is just with my daughter. So give her a big hug and a kiss. And then my husband and I alternate. I do the drop off 2 days a week for Baker. He does it 1 day a week. So this was my day. So then Baker and I pop in the car and head to preschool. And his school is actually pretty far away. So it's about a 25-minute drive. So we get him to school, walk him in, give him the whole hug and kiss. And then I head back into the car and I am at my office on those days when I have both drop-offs. I'm at my office by 9:30 to start my workday. And I do have an office that's, in an office building separate from my house. And that's the beginning of my workday.
So your workday is starting, you're in your office. How do you organize your workday? Or do you have any control over how you organize your workday?
Yeah. I do. And I've gotten better over the years of figuring out how can I like accomplish the most and be the most efficient and like present for clients and get other things done that need to be gotten done. Right. So what I do now is I actually have entire days of the week that are dedicated just to basically being on the phone with people. And the days where there's absolutely no calls, because I think if you're someone who's like in the workforce, like outside of the home, this will probably resonate if you have like meetings and calls every 45 minutes or something, it's like you can never really get anything done. It's like one meeting ends early, the other one starts late, you're like running to get something, and then you just like stare at your inbox for 10 minutes and like wait for the next call. It's kind of like this psychological thing. And I was realizing that I was becoming so inefficient because I was just letting I like people are going to book when I say they can. So people were booking an hour and a half apart, 5 days a week, all day. And it was a disaster. So on this day that I was recording, what I was doing is a day that I block off fully from calls. So I have no client calls on this day. And that's really helped my like efficiency for sure at work.
And then how long are you in your office? When do you kind of wrap your day, and what does that look like?
Yeah. So if it's a day when I'm bringing Baker to school, I'm in by 9:30. Okay. And if it's a day I'm taking Teddy to school, it's more like 8:45. So it just depends on the day. And then I leave. Well, I'll walk you through it. So this is pretty typical for a non-client call day. So at Hero is in my office by 9:30. So the first thing I do when I get in is check email for clients. So when I have clients who are actively in plan, I've been proactively emailing them. I have a system like my CRM sends them an email at 7 a.m. in whatever time zone they're in, asking them how it went last night, what questions they have, that type of thing. So the first thing I do is go to that, like checking in on these people. And I always will check first anybody who it was their first night, because oftentimes that's when I'm going to get a good gauge on how things are going. Like, how is this parent going to respond when something is hard? And, people are really different. And so I'm always, if nothing else, very curious to see what they're going to say. So I check my email, make sure I get back to my clients as quickly as I can in the morning, just to give them some encouragement or troubleshoot anything, especially since I'm on the West Coast and so many of my clients, just like you, are on the East Coast. I'm catching them. It's already like noon where they are. So I want to make sure if they have nap questions or whatever, I can try to get to them quickly. So on this day, after I do that, and this is the time when I'll eat my breakfast. So because I'm in like an actual like office complex, we have a kitchen and all that stuff. So I bring my food here. And that day I had yogurt myself with some granola. That's kind of a standard breakfast for me. And at 10 a.m. I had my, is bi-weekly when it's every other week? Yeah, right? My bi-weekly meeting with my business coach.
It works both ways, which is the weirdest part of that word.
Oh, really? Like it could be twice a week? That's confusing.
Yeah.
It
could be twice a week or every other week.
In this case, it's every other, which has been amazing. So he's like a business coach, and it's really nice because I have my own business and I don't have like a boss giving me, metrics and things to follow, and just somebody to kind of bounce ideas off of and things like that. So we were talking through that day, a big project that I'm working on, which I haven't really talked about yet. So I'm not going to talk about that until I'm quite ready, but it's in the early stages. And he was just talking me through like timelines and how to prioritize well and that kind of stuff. So I had that call at 10 with him. It's like usually an hour-long Zoom we have. And then every Wednesday, my podcast goes live. So depending on if I've had time earlier in the week to record it, if I've had a guest episode that potentially has been recorded weeks before. But in this case, I didn't have one that was already teed up. So at 11, I recorded the episode that was going to go live that day. So that takes about an hour just for me to prep the notes and record it. So I did the actual recording part. And then at noon, I had my monthly check-in with my operations director. So for clients who work with me, she's somebody that you interact with a little bit. She's helping send different documents and keeping people up to date on what's going on. And then she also manages PR and some other like marketing things for me. So we just have a monthly call where we're going over like big projects, anything that we need to talk about, whatever it is. So we had that Zoom as well. And then at 1, it was time for me to do a little bit of editing with the podcast, putting in my intro, outro, uploading it into my server, and then doing the very limited marketing. I'm not, as you know, I don't really do much marketing. So it was just emailing everyone, telling them this is the episode, writing some snazzy notes for it. And then I typically will promote them on Instagram the day they go out too. So I was just, putting on Instagram, new episodes out. Here's what it's about. That all takes about 30 minutes. So at 1:30, took a little break to eat my lunch. And then being the like type A millennial person that I am, lunch does not mean I'm like staring into the abyss. That's typically when I'll go back and think about anything, like I call it mom CEO time, which is when I'm like, okay, that form is yet again overdue. I have to pay tuition for the preschool. I have to, we had a trip coming up later that week. So I was like, okay, I need to check us in for our flight. Like, do we have the car rental things squared away? So I'm doing kind of those little logistical things that I sometimes do at the end of the night, but I hate doing that. I hate like at 11 o'clock being on my laptop, like checking in on delta.com. It's not my vibe. So got those things done. And then 2 to 4 p.m. was really blocked off, like heads down. This is my time. And this is part of the reason I really like having days where I'm just on the phone talking to people and I'm fully in that zone, just like thinking about these conversations, like, in the weeds. And then this time, those 2 hours, I had the next day a client who I was doing their training call, which is when I walk them through their plan. And I had 3 calls that were intakes. So it was my first kind of interaction with the client and I'm learning about them. So those 2 hours were me writing that one client's plan and then reviewing the other 3 clients' intakes and taking my notes so that I would be prepared for those conversations. And anytime I have kind of that time blocked off where I'm working on client stuff, I'm also looking, I have all of my systems. I use Trello, I use Dubsado, all these things, but I'm looking at the next few days and thinking through what else I need to do to be prepared for those conversations, right? So there was somebody else who had taken my course. I was reviewing the notes they had put in for that call, et cetera. Getting that stuff done. And then at 4 o'clock on this day, I don't always do this, but at 4 o'clock, I left the office and went to pick up Teddy, my oldest. One thing I've been trying to do recently is to actually dedicate and block off time where I call it vitamin D in me because I'm a loser. But it literally says on my calendar, vitamin D in me, like don't put something here. Because like, we got to like get out of the office and like get off my laptop. It's good for me. It's good for my kids. One thing I had actually talked to my business coach about this. I was like, I want to be better about having a good transition from work to home. Like, I feel like I'm still very much in work mode when I get home. And sometimes it's almost like jarring. It's like, and then there's like someone's running at me with sticky hands. And I'm like, what's happening? And he actually said, like, try to have a transitional period a little bit more instead of just going from A to Z if you can on days that you can. So when it's possible, I'll pick up Teddy a little bit early instead of leaving the office at 4:50 and racing home to be there by 5, which is what I sometimes do. I will get him at 4, drop him at my house and get out of the car. And then I will just put my headphones in and go for a walk around the neighborhood for half an hour and just kind of like decompress and get out of the weeds. So this day I did that and I was listening to this new podcast that I've been enjoying called Believable. I'm really into like the true crime, like scam artist, like whatever type things. This is like some woman she's just like a scammer. You guys will have to check it out, but it's very fascinating. So did that for 30 minutes.
It's so interesting that you mentioned that time that you need between the vitamin D and me time, or like the time between work and kids, because that has come up I've had a bunch of conversations this week. That's come up, I think, in 2 of the podcast interviews I've done recently, as well as a bunch of things I just read on LinkedIn today. Like it's all in my head. So I get easily overstimulated by my kids when I go from like my quiet office with my computer and then downstairs to them. Same. Like, so I actually prefer some days. My husband tries to help me by picking up the kids, but I actually think sometimes I prefer driving to go get them because I have that transition from
totally.
It's like a natural point of transition, and rather than them just coming home and like attacking me with their thoughts and opinions.
I completely agree.
It's just so interesting that you mentioned that because I think all moms are probably experiencing that, going from the context switching so quickly.
Totally. Right. Because kids are just like black and white. They have no transition. They're just on and off. So we got to do it for them. Yeah.
How long have you had an office?
Yeah.
Or has that always been the case since Brittany Sheehan Sleep came to be?
No. So when I launched the business, it was actually, and this is like crazy, but I literally launched like the week that the world shut down for COVID. So we obviously at the time didn't know what was going on, but it was like, I like built my website and was like ready to go and got the email like, hi, so school's going to be canceled just for this week because there's like a little thing going around. So like, we're just not going to have preschool this week. And I was like, oh, okay, we'll make it work. LOL. LOL. And at the time I had a 2-year-old. He had just started preschool like that year. And then I had a baby. I had a 6-month-old. So that was super chill. So I was very much working from home then. And, you know, and at the time, of course, like my business is very much a full-time job. It's like quite a thing now. But when you start, you never know like what, you know, how that's going to go. So I certainly wasn't looking for office space off the bat. But it wasn't until last February that I was like, I really, if I can, I need to get a space because our house is small. We live by the beach and like, you know, it's a small house and there's 5 people in it. And even though the kids are sometimes in school and we have a nanny, like there's always people around. My husband is like, love him dearly. He's the type to just like burst into the room and be like, what do you guys want to do for dinner? And I'm like, I'm on a call. So like the separation has been amazing, to be honest, having like a place that I can go that I can really focus. And I will say too, going back to that whole transition thing, it's made me getting off of work and seeing my kids so much more fun. Because I think when I'm like upstairs and like they see me coming down and they're really respectful, like they don't, you know, I'm very clear on the boundary of like when I'm up there, you can't come up. But like I can hear somebody fall and cry and like I can hear them like yelling at each other and they see me walking around. And it's so different now when they see me at the beginning and the end of the workday because they all 3 of them like run to me and they're like, Mama. And like they're so excited and hug me. It's like the sweetest thing. And that didn't happen when I was working at the house. So I love that part.
That's awesome. So
yeah,
you've gotten home, the kids you've had your vitamin D. What does the rest of the evening look like for you?
Yes. So on this day, and this is pretty standard, our nanny leaves at 5. So because my husband gets up so early for work, he is like off at 5, right? Because theoretically that's like a 12-hour work day. And he, you know, he'll take breaks. He goes surfing and stuff sometimes, but usually he's coming in around 5 as well. So we come in and then he's much more like the chef in our house. Like I cook sometimes, but he's more the default chef. So on this day, like from about 5 to 5:30, we were all outside. So, you know, we live in California. It's nice most of the year. And it is kind of a city where we live. So like we have a small yard in the front, but like most people don't really have yards around here. So the kids play in the alley. So we went out to the alley, like we call it the redneck hangout, which is when we pull up our beach chairs and we like drink beers and put our like boombox up and the kids play with the neighbor kids in the alley. So we did that for about 30 minutes. And then he went inside to start cooking and he made chicken and some pasta. And I stayed with the kids for another about 30 minutes, just like playing. They were like on their little tractors and running around. And around 6, he yelled in for us to come up for dinner. And I definitely go on my phone when they're playing in the alley, but I'm pretty strict if I can be about not working. I used to have basically no boundaries with clients when I first started, which I don't think was a bad thing. I think you almost have to not have them and then figure out like where the line in the sand is going to be for you. And I know just because I have other, you know, work friends, if you will, in this industry that everyone does things very differently. And some people are like, I would never talk to anyone on the weekend, or like they like working at night. So they'll like do calls at 10 p.m. Like you got to figure out what works for you. For me, it feels better to really be like just with my people when I'm with them and then to like be just with my family when I'm with them. So I try to not really do any work then. And then at 6, we went in for dinner and we're done by about 6:30. So often around this time, like my brain is so fried that I can't like do very much. I really enjoy bedtime with my kids, but sometimes that time between eating dinner and bedtime, I don't love. So this is usually when I let them watch TV. So around 6:30, 6:20 maybe, we put on The Parent Trap. Weirdly, all three of them right now are obsessed with The Parent Trap, like the new one with Lindsay Lohan. So like even my 2-year-old. So we put on The Parent Trap and we all kind of hung out. Like Alex was cleaning the kitchen a little bit. He's definitely like, he'll do the cooking and sometimes the cleanup, and I'll do more of like the kids stuff. Like, you know, I'm down there refereeing who's hitting who with a pillow and screaming and who needs water and blah, blah, blah. So I kind of sit with them while we watch The Parent Trap. And then around 7:15, I brought Delaney up for bed, my daughter, the 2-year-old. And that's pretty standard for her. And her bedtime routine is super fast. It's more like us tickling and giggling. I actually don't do a ton of structure with hers. It's just like us chatting and having fun, playing with her animals. I put her down. And then around 7:30, I kind of do them in a row. So then at this point, if Alex has the kitchen cleaned up, my husband, he's like kind of done for the night at this point with like, with any of us. He's like, because he's up so early at 5. So he's usually downstairs on the couch, zoned out, like probably checking his fantasy football team, like God only knows. So 7:30, I bring Baker up for bed. So he gets like one book. We brush his teeth. We sing a song. Each of my kids, I have like a song for them. So he's down, you know, maybe 15 minutes later or so. And by around 8 at the latest, I'll bring Teddy up. So he, of the 3 kids, actually has the longest bedtime routine because he's now reading like chapter books with me. So oftentimes, especially if bedtime is kind of running late, which on this day it was, like I was enjoying Parent Trap, whatever, I was having a glass of wine. So I was like, oh, whatever, they can go to bed a little later. So I think it was like a little later, maybe it was like 7:45 when I brought Baker up. So usually then I'll be like, Teddy, can you go put your PJs on and brush your teeth? Like he'll go and get himself ready for bed while I'm putting Baker to bed. So after Baker's down, I went into his room and he was already in his PJs. He had brushed his teeth, or so he claimed. And then we get on his bed and we read a book. So we've been reading Junie B. Jones. That's the one I like reading to him right now. So it was the one called Junie B. Jones Has a Peep in Her Pocket, which is when one of the neighbor kids or one of the classmates in kindergarten tells Junie B. that a rooster is going to peck her head off when they're going to visit a farm. It was very funny. So we read a couple chapters of that. And then same thing, I sing him his song. He gets into bed. So by about 8:30, like at the latest, everyone, you know, if it's a day where it's dragged on a little bit because I'm lazy about getting them to bed, definitely by 8:15, 8:30, everyone's asleep or at least in their beds, quiet. And then I'll come out and finish, you know, I don't know if this will resonate with any other women, but even when my husband has a full job, he does like 80% of it. So he'll be like, I cleaned the kitchen. And I'm like, that's okay. Well, that's some of the kitchen is cleaned. So I will go back and, which is fine. He cooked. I'm not complaining, right? It is what it is. This is teamwork. So I will go back and like actually finish cleaning all the kitchen. And, you know, this is the time to where if like boxes from Amazon have come or something like that, like I think we'd gotten a couple of packages, like a diaper box. So I'm doing kind of those like logistical, trying to make my house not look like a dumpster fire. And then usually I'll go back downstairs with Alex. We'll like chat a little bit, maybe watch a little show or something. And by 9, he's usually up in bed because he has to get up so early. On the weekends, he doesn't. But on this day, a typical weekday, he's in bed by 9. And in this day in particular, I went and got ice cream for myself because we just opened here in Manhattan Beach. They opened a Salt and Straw, which if you guys are California people, and I think they have it some other states too, but it's like amazing ice cream.
So good.
And they opened one in our town. So I had went and gotten a pint of that. It was like this cherry pie, spicy cherry pie or something. You know, it's one of those like fancy ice cream places where all the flavors like sound gross, but they're not. And I was watching, then usually I'll put a show on at this point. So I watched Secrets of the Blue Zone. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's like all these pockets of the world where people live to be 100.
I have heard of that.
Yeah, it's so good. So sort of like ironic that I was like housing a pint of ice cream while watching a show about like how to be healthy and live long. But you know, it's fine. And then at 10:30, that's usually when I'll like force myself off the couch and go kind of do all of the like last minute, get the house ready for bed, like lock the doors, we have a front gate that I have to lock. We have our alarm system, you know, clean up the couch, all that stuff. And for sure, when I'm watching TV, I also am always scrolling on my phone, which is so bad. But like that classic, like you have to rewind the scene because you were on your phone and then you rewind it too far and you go back on your phone and then you have to rewind it again. I do that all the time, but usually try to be in bed by 11. And on that night it was like 11:50 by the time I shut my eyes and get ready to do it again on Thursday.
That's awesome. I love the detailed notes of your day. So thank you. How do you stay organized, both for your family, 3 kids, you got a lot going on, and for your business? What tools do you use for organization?
Yes, I actually very recently, and this was one of the things that my business coach has been amazing about, is like, I kind of, anytime I have thoughts like this, like I'm not organized enough, I will just do like a brain dump of things to talk to him about. And that was one. So I now use this system, like organization system called Trello. And I will put in, so I have different, I'm actually going to pull it up so I can like accurately say what I'm doing, but I have different boards. They're called boards. So I have one that I call Mom CEO, like I'd mentioned to you. And I have one that is like client. And that is like anyone I'm working with one-on-one. And I literally have them like tagged where they are in my funnel. Like this person needs to sign the contract. This person, I need to review their intake, etc. And then I have one all about people taking my courses, like things like I need to do an email about this thing with the course. I have one that's just about operational things in my office. And one of the sections is even just like the physical office. Like, oh, I need to get a stand for my computer thing, or, you know, I need to email the person about whatever. So I really try to like go through that, and I do use it every day and look, because I'll forget, as you know, as a mom, you forget random stuff like, oh, we need to RSVP to those birthday parties and get that kid a gift. So that is what I use for just the general organization. And then my husband, I don't know if he really looks at it, but he is technically copied on a family calendar I've created, which I always have visible on my work calendar, because that's the calendar that I'm looking at every day, right? Like I'm looking at my calls and everything. But even if I have something really mundane, or not mundane, but something really small, like I said I was going to grab drinks with someone at 8:00 next Wednesday, like I put that in the family calendar so I don't forget, because I have literally forgotten to meet up with friends because I just agreed to something and didn't write it down and I forgot. So those are my best tools.
That is a great lead into the question. How do you make time for relationships with friends in your day or week?
Yeah. I mean, I wish I had like a really good way of doing it. Like I'm going to reach out to one person a day and da, 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 da. But instead it's more like, you know, I try to keep as much as I can like active with my friends in terms of just like communication. Right. And I feel like it works well, because then people will do that with me too. Right. Like I'm actually meeting a friend in about an hour and a half for lunch. And like she had reached out and was like, we should grab lunch and blah, blah, blah. So I feel like it happens somewhat organically, but I will occasionally, especially if I have a week where I don't have any social plans, I'm like a very social person, I will like think in my brain, I'm like, who haven't I hung out with in a while? I should reach out to so-and-so and like see if they want to grab a drink, or like see what they're up to this weekend, because all of my friends for the most part have little kids too. And most of us have like 3 little kids, and it's just hard. Like sometimes, you know, you can't really just like wait for people to like show up at your door. You have to reach out and be like, what are you doing this weekend? And they're like, oh my God, let's go to the beach. Da, 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 da. So I try to make an effort to do that.
I love that. And then how do you and your husband make time for your relationship during the week?
Yeah, I think we do a pretty good job. I mean, because in some ways we're like ships passing in the night because of our schedules. But we do have that time, like the 15 or 20 minutes that is after the kids are in bed, before he goes to bed, where we can catch up, and beyond just like chatting, but also like talk about things. It's not even like we have a set plan or way of doing it. I think we just are pretty good. Like, I mean, I wouldn't say we have a date night like once a week, but I think because we're pretty social people in general, even if it's not just the two of us, there is like most weekends or during the week, there's like a period where we are without our kids, which honestly, sometimes even just being with like another couple feels kind of like time for us, you know, because we're like getting ready together, driving to somewhere together and like hanging out, whatever. And we also both, we're not doing it today actually, but often on Friday afternoons when both of our brains are like a little bit fried and we're about to get into the weekend that's busy with kids and all kinds of stuff, we will often meet, we will like often meet somewhere like in town and just grab drinks in the afternoon on Fridays, and then just like get home together at 5 to relieve our nanny and like kick off the weekend with kids. So that, I mean, I would say that happens at least once or twice a month on Fridays where like we'll just go at like 2:30 or 3 and get drinks. And then at least once a month, if not more, we do have like a full on date night. Like the last one we went to this like restaurant that just reopened in Beverly Hills that like, I guess Frank Sinatra was like one of the founders of, and it was like really old school and cool. So we'll like do fun stuff like that, just the two of us. Yeah. So I think we're pretty good about finding time.
That's awesome. What is a ball that you are consciously dropping at this point in your life, or something you're deprioritizing because it just doesn't fit in your current schedule or days?
Yeah. I mean, well, one thing that I have done that's helped a lot with streamlining like things that need to get done during the week is I actually effectively like take the day off on Monday mornings, which I know sounds so weird, but I'll spend like 30, 45 minutes at home, not at my office, looking at client emails. So like I'm there from like my existing clients, but I stay at home usually until about 1:00. And that's when I do all of the laundry and I do like all of the other like house stuff, because since I'm working in an office all day and then when I'm home, I'm with my kids, like there is no time to do those things. And again, I don't want to spend midnight to 2 a.m. folding laundry. So that is, maybe that's not really a ball that's being dropped, but it's something that like I've like sort of strategized that throughout the week. I'm not like, oh my God, the laundry's piling up. I'm like, yeah, it is, because I'm going to do it on Monday and it's fine. I mean, I hate to say it, but I think maybe other moms can relate. I feel like if a ball is dropping, it's like balls for me. You know, it's like my hair, my highlights like really need to get done. And I haven't gotten them done in like 4 months. I just booked an appointment because I just didn't have time. It's like, I just forgot to take care of myself. So me is the ball that usually gets dropped if one is going to get dropped.
What is something that you guys outsource regularly, like cleaning or grocery shopping or something like that?
Yes. Well, yeah, those are the two things. I would say the biggest one is that we do have like a housekeeper who comes once a week, you know, just like standard, like cleans. Obviously I do like all the tidying and those kinds of things, but does like the, you know, cleaning the bathrooms and things like that. And then I have this phrase a friend told me once, and I love it. And I use it all the time. It's chaos tax. Chaos tax is a tax you pay because your life is chaotic. You have little kids and everything is what it is. And my chaos tax is Instacart. I hate to say it, but I pretty rarely physically go to the grocery store anymore because it just takes so much time. Like I genuinely don't have an hour and a half to go to Whole Foods. So I pay for that monthly fee and like the delivery thing so that I can get home and the groceries are just there. And that decision has been like a huge weight off of just the mental load. Yeah.
I love that chaos tax phrase. I'm going to start using that.
Yeah. Chaos tax also applies if you have to pay penalties because your life is too busy and you forgot something, like you forgot to like do the car registration. And so you got like a penalty because it's late. That's where chaos tax also often applies.
That's awesome. One question people might be curious about, how did you get into sleep consulting?
Yeah, it's because it's kind of random from what I did before, but I had like a, you know, quote unquote, like normal corporate job, like kind of an intense one. I was working in New York, lived in New York most of my entire adult life until I came out to LA, and I became pregnant with my oldest Teddy. So this was like 7 years ago. And I was sitting in a conference room. We had like some big meeting, and our chief of staff or general counsel, I don't remember his title, fell asleep in the meeting. And I was like 5 or 6 weeks pregnant. Like I hadn't even told anyone except my husband. And he fell asleep and I like kicked, and this was like an 11 a.m. meeting. And he was like, oh my God, sorry. I was like up all night with our baby. And I was just like shook. I was like, is that what happens when you have a baby? Like you are so tired that you literally fall asleep sitting up in like a really important meeting. And it honestly stuck with me. And I was like, I can't be this person. If this is normal, then it can't be my norm. So I started, I'm also somebody who needs a lot of sleep. Like I'm not one of those people who can get 5 hours and be a happy person. So I started just like buying all the books, and, you know, this is long before there's anything like a sleep course, but I was like buying all these different books and reading things. And I think I've always been very comfortable with kids. I was a nanny. That was like the job I had in college. I had like a babysitting empire when I was 12 and had like, you know, the whole neighborhood, like, you know, eating out of the palm of my hand, coming over I had like all these standing appointments. And so I like went into motherhood relatively confident, but that was like something I really was focused on. And I kind of cobbled together a bunch of different things that I thought would work for my son. And it did. And he was sleeping through the night at 3 months old. And don't get me wrong, it was hard work. I was very focused on it, but it felt like, oh, if you like know what you're doing, you kind of do these things, then like this will be an easy thing. And in New York, most of my friends didn't have kids. So like, that's just kind of what I thought. And then when I got to LA and he was like 9 or 10 months old, I started going to Mommy and Me's and like meeting new people. And it was actually in a Mommy and Me class with Baker. So I kind of got the idea for this business when he was a newborn, because I was in one of these classes and it was like taking me right back to that guy at the meeting. It was like somebody, I remember this one woman in particular said she had gotten in the shower with her clothes on and she was crying. Like it was like funny, but like it wasn't funny. Like she was so exhausted and everyone's like commiserating and like sharing their stories. And I'm just looking around like, this is insane. Like, why is everyone suffering?
This is not
like, this is not okay. And I wasn't a sleep consultant at that point, nor was I the facilitator of this class. So like, sure, a few times I'd raise my hand and be like, have you tried da-da-da? But like, I didn't want to be like that woman, you know, who's like, everyone, my baby's a great sleeper. Like, you're all dumb. And I literally went home and I had decided sort of on purpose, sort of on accident when we left New York, like I wanted to try kind of being a stay-at-home mom. I didn't want to like move across the country. We knew absolutely no one in California and just like hand my baby to some stranger and like without a house, without any friends. I was like, I want to like get to know this town and then I can go back to work if I want to. And so I'd kind of gotten to that place where I wanted to do something work-wise outside of the house anyway. And I literally went home and Googled like, can you help people with sleep as like a job? That's how I did it. And I was like, oh, turns out you can. This is a real thing. You can like get certification and get trained. So I kind of went from being the person that my friends were just like, how did you do that? Like, help me with my baby, to like making it my job. And yeah, that's how it started.
Here we are.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Brittany, what is something that you do for yourself during the day that is important to you, that is kind of just for you?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't think I have anything set in stone that I like always do for me, but I for sure like the one thing I do at the start of the day that really helps is I always make myself, I know this sounds so small, but sometimes it's the little things. I was actually telling a friend this, like sometimes it's not the trip to Hawaii. It's like the little things that like make you feel good about yourself that may actually make the difference. So I really make a point in the morning of like actually getting dressed. Like I'm wearing earrings, I'm wearing a bracelet right now. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds silly, but in LA, you can like wear athleisure all day, every day. You can wear it to like a wedding. No one would care. It's like, you know, which is probably how a lot of places are. But I really make a point. Like I've had friends who'd be like, you're always wearing jeans. You're like so fancy. And I'm like, it's denim, you guys. Like this is not, but it makes me feel like a real person. So I really try to make an effort, even when I have only like 2 minutes to get it done, to like put on some concealer, look like a human. And I make myself like, I have a big Stanley that I keep that has like ice water with lemon and sea salt in it, which is, I don't know why. Someone told me that you're supposed to do that. It's good for you, but
it's really good. I like lemon and sea salt in my water.
And it just tastes good too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do that for myself. And I do try, I mean, the vitamin D in me thing is probably the most important, but I try, even if it's not at the like set time I've blocked off or whatever, I really do try to have like at least 15 or 20 minutes where I'm either listening to music or a podcast, and trying to just like move my body so that I can like be human. And that definitely helps. And I think just in general, I'm one of those people that like very much, I really enjoy planning and looking forward to things. So even if it's something that I'm not going to like book it today, it really makes me feel good and like happy to be like, what if we did this trip with like our cousins? And like, what if we stayed at this kind of, I'm going on Airbnb and seeing if they have any houses for 3 families. And like, I really enjoy planning and like anticipating trips and events and things like that. So I definitely do that a lot too, just to like make myself happy.
I love that. So Brittany, where can people learn more about you and follow you?
You can find me at my website, which is BrittanySheehan.com. And you can follow me on Instagram, Brittany Sheehan Sleep. That is where I am the most. I mean, obviously, if you want to purchase a sleep course or work with me, that, you know, the website is where you do it. But I'm pretty active on the IG stories. So if you want to see the day live in action, you will see it. That is for sure.
And then what is your podcast is the snooze button, right?
It is. My podcast is called The Snooze Button. So I do some guest episodes just like what you do. And I also do lots of solo ones where sometimes I'm talking about sleep stuff, but I try to mix it up a little bit and talk about non-sleep stuff sometimes as well. Just things that I think would be relevant to probably the exact same type of person who's listening to this podcast. Moms.
I've listened to a bunch of episodes. It's a great listen.
I'm glad.
And then Brittany, what is your favorite part of a day in your life?
Oh, I mean, definitely it's funny. It's my two entrances. It is finally getting to my office and being like, I did it. Everyone has gone to school. Everyone is safe and happy. Like, let's tackle today. And then I would say that's my second favorite. But my favorite is just that moment I walk in the back door and all of their little faces turn to me and they're like, Mama. And they all start talking at once and running towards me. Like, it feels good. It's nice.
I love that. I often walk out of daycare sometimes. It's kind of like the exit, but the entrance into the second part of my day. I sometimes leave daycare and pump my fists in the air, high five the parents. We did it.
We did it. Exactly.
So I can definitely relate on that first one.
Exactly. I can relate.
Awesome. Well, Brittany, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast today. It has been a blast, and I'm so glad that we got to chat.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun.